There comes a moment silent, almost imperceptible when reality itself seems to pause. A flicker in the field, a shift that feels both foreign and familiar. You can't trace it to an action, or a thought, or even a choice. Yet something deep beneath your ordinary awareness has reconfigured. It's the kind of moment where you wake before the alarm, not because you decided to, but because consciousness decided for you. The air feels different, though nothing has changed. The colors of the morning seem to hum with an unfamiliar frequency, as if the world has been repainted by an invisible hand. This is the space between timelines, the thin membrane where one version of you fades and another quietly begins. You haven't done anything yet, but the universe already has. It has rearranged itself around a signal you didn't know you were sending. We call this a quantum jump, but that phrase doesn't capture its intimacy. A jump suggests distance, a leap between points, but what really happens is collapse. The folding of infinite probabilities into a single, coherent now. You don't travel through time. Time travels through you. And when your vibration, the composite rhythm of thought, emotion, and attention becomes incompatible with your current reality, the universe doesn't resist. It simply updates. Einstein hinted at this when he said, "Reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one." David Bohm called it the implicate order, where everything that ever was or will be already exists in holographic potential. And in that ocean of potential, you are not the swimmer, you are the current. Most people believe transformation takes effort, discipline, or years of self-work. But the truth hidden beneath that belief is unsettling. The greatest shifts often occur without permission. They happen in the gaps between thoughts, in the moments your mind forgets to defend its boundaries. Perhaps this is why ancient mystics spoke of surrender, and why physicists now speak of wave function collapse. Both point to the same secret. The observer doesn't cause the change. The observer is the change. And so, the inevitable jump is not a technique, not a ritual, not a step-by-step manifestation trick. It's the natural response of the field when you stop being loyal to who you used to be. What if the shift you've been praying for already happened? What if you're standing inside the new timeline right now, but your story hasn't caught up? Take a breath. Listen. Reality is whispering in a new dialect. The coordinates of your being are being rewritten, not someday, now. Welcome to the secret to how quantum jumps become inevitable. Because the moment you remember who's really doing the jumping, inevitability is no longer a mystery. It's your nature. The core premise, the architecture of inevitability. Here is the thesis we will test against your body, your memory, and the quiet mechanics of the field. Quantum jumps become inevitable when identity relaxes, its grip and coherence takes its place. Inevitability is not force, it is resonance. When your inner signal stops contradicting itself, when thought, feeling, and intention hum in a single tone, the field does what the field always does. It matches. Not because you commanded it, but because nothing else is possible. The ego imagines change as conquest targets, proofs, milestones. But inevitability is different. It emerges when two conditions appear together. First, identity loosens. The me you have rehearsed stops insisting on its old coordinates. Second, coherence stabilizes. The heart's electrical rhythm and the brain's neural patterns phase lock into a steady broadcast. In that broadcast, the past loses jurisdiction. The field is not persuaded, it is informed. Think of identity as a scaffold of remembered emotions. You call it personality, but it is really a rhythm you've learned to return to under stress. When that rhythm is disrupted through honest self-observation, through grief fully felt, through love permitted without bargaining, the scaffold wobbles. This wobble is not weakness, It is the doorway through which inevitability enters. For the jump to become unavoidable, the scaffolding can no longer carry yesterday's weight. Coherence is the other half. It is not positive thinking. It is inner congruence. Your nervous system recognizes truth long before your language does. Breath deepens, shoulders drop, vision widens. The mind stops arguing with the body. A single signal moves through you like a note played cleanly on a well-tuned instrument. That note is your selection mechanism. In a universe of superimposed outcomes, a clean note cannot return silence. It must return the world that resonates with it. This is why attempts to manifest from scarcity fail. Scarcity is a multi-signal wanting and doubting at once. The field receives crosstalk and replies with static. But when you stop asking reality to reassure you, when you allow the frequency of the already become to be felt without proof, your signal simplifies. In that simplification, probability densifies into experience. The wave narrows into a path, then a room, then a life. So the core premise is not mystical bravado. It is a sober description of how selection happens. Identity softens, coherence strengthens, and the universe obeys its own physics. The observer and the observed are not two. They are a single event unfolding from the inside out. You do not move matter with effort. You release resistance until only the matching timeline remains. If you are listening from the center of your chest, you can feel the premise clicking into place, not as an argument to be won, but as a memory returning. You have done this before. Each time you stopped performing the self you had outgrown, life changed without negotiation. That was not luck, that was law. Hold this architecture in your awareness like a quiet diagram drawn in light. Loosened identity, stabilized coherence, inevitable selection. Everything that follows will be an exploration of this single truth told through biology, myth, and the mathematics of attention. The scientific bridge, the physics of becoming. Physics has been trying to tell a spiritual story for a century, and most people missed it because they were busy looking for particles instead of listening to patterns. In the double-slit experiment, an electron doesn't behave like a fixed object moving through one path. It behaves like a probability cloud, a wave of potential outcomes. Only when it is observed does it choose. Only then does it become a single, measurable event. That collapse from infinite possibilities to one lived reality is not a metaphor. It is describing the same mechanism you keep calling my life. In plain terms, reality does not finalize itself until consciousness participates. David Bohm described the visible world as an explicate order, the unfolded result of a deeper, invisible implicate order, where all possibilities are already encoded as patterns in a unified field. In that view, you are not generating reality from scratch every morning. You are decoding it, selecting, translating a frequency position into an experience timeline. This is where identity and biology meet the quantum. You are not just a mind having thoughts. You are an electrical and magnetic broadcaster. Your heart produces an electromagnetic field measurable several feet beyond your body. Your brain emits synchronized wave patterns dependent on emotional state. Together, those signals form a kind of personal broadcast tower, transmitting a stable message into a responsive field. When your inner state is incoherent, thinking, "I'm safe," while your body is clenched in survival, saying, "I'm abundant," with a nervous system braced for loss, the signal is fragmented. The wave you're sending out is noisy, self-canceling. You are radiating multiple contradictory timelines at once, and the field gives you exactly what you're transmitting. Mixed outcomes, unstable feedback, almosts. But when you enter coherence, when your thoughts, emotions, and internal posture align into one uninterrupted instruction, the signal becomes clean, sharp, focused, And at that point, the collapse of probability is no longer gradual, it's immediate. The outer world begins to organize around the broadcast you're holding. This is how inevitability stops being mystical and becomes mechanical. Your nervous system is not just carrying you through reality, it is voting on which version of reality you are allowed to access. If your baseline state is fear, you are chemically rehearsing the timeline in which fear is justified. If your baseline state is self-worth, you are chemically rehearsing the timeline in which self-worth is reflected back as environment, opportunity, and response. Your body is not lagging behind your destiny. Your body is the selector of your destiny. And here is the part most people don't want to hear. The field doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you are currently regulated to receive. This is why transformation often feels like it just happens one day. Biologically, you crossed a threshold. The old emotional baseline lost stability, and a new signal held long enough to imprint. Energetically, the jump had already occurred. You just woke up in the version of you that could finally witness it. So when we talk about quantum jumping, we're not talking about a miracle reserved for the chosen. We're talking about what happens when consciousness, biology, and the field find agreement. When you become internally undeniable, reality has to match. The ancient parallels, the forgotten science of the soul. Long before quantum mechanics gave language to uncertainty, the ancients lived inside its rhythm. They called it the 14, great chain of being, the Tao, the breath of Brahman. Each tradition trying to describe the same invisible order modern physics now measures in wavelengths and fields. What the mystics intuited through contemplation, science is rediscovering through experiment. That form is fluid, and consciousness is the thread that weaves it. In the Upanishads, the sages wrote that the universe arises from Brahman, the unmanifest awareness dreaming itself as matter. They said the self and the cosmos are mirrors. To know one is to shift the other. The Hermetic philosophers echoed this thousands of years later. As above, so below. As within, so without. The axiom wasn't poetic, it was procedural. They understood that what you hold in the temple of thought becomes instruction for the fabric of reality. Buddha taught it as the law of dependent origination. All phenomena arise in relation. There is no separate self moving through a static world. There is only the dance of causes and conditions, appearing as you. And when those conditions change, when awareness releases its fixation on one pattern of perception, a new reality unfolds effortlessly. That is quantum jumping in the language of enlightenment. The Egyptian mystics described a similar process in the Book of Coming Forth by Day, the ancient text modern scholars call the Book of the Dead. To them, death was not an end but a recalibration of frequency. The soul shed the density of one form and awakened in another dimension of resonance. Transformation wasn't earned through struggle, it was the natural movement of energy seeking coherence with higher order. In Taoism, Lao Tzu whispered the same secret: "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." The Tao is not a distant force. It is the unresisting current of reality itself. When you align with it, change ceases to be effort, it becomes flow. The Taoist sage and the quantum physicist agree. Control collapses possibility, surrender expands it. Even early Christian mystics sensed the quantum nature of creation. Meister Eckhart wrote, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." The observer and the observed one awareness folded upon itself. What modern laboratories call the observer effect, mystics once called union with the divine. Every tradition, from the Vedas to Hermetic alchemy, taught a single truth hidden beneath language. Reality is participatory. Consciousness is not trapped inside matter, it orchestrates it. And when the human mind grows quiet enough to hear the field's pulse, it discovers the same revelation physics now hints at, that nothing outside you moves until something inside you harmonizes. So the ancients were never wrong. They were simply describing quantum law in the poetry of spirit. The jump they called enlightenment is the same event you call transformation. The moment the dreamer remembers it is the dream. The human reflection when the field becomes personal. Every grand theory eventually lands somewhere intimate in the quiet territory of the human heart. It's one thing to speak of waves and fields, but another to feel them moving through your daily life. The proof of the quantum is not in equations. It's in mornings when you wake up different and can't explain why. Think back to those turning points that never announced themselves. The day you suddenly stopped needing someone's approval. The evening an old fear dissolved mid-sentence. The strange calm that settled over you in a crisis you thought would break you. In each case, something in the invisible architecture of your being shifted. The outer details remained same job, same sky, same heartbeat, yet you were no longer reading the world from the same frequency. This is what inevitability looks like from the inside. You didn't decide to change. The circuitry of emotion simply rewrote itself. The body that once tensed at rejection now relaxes. The mind that replayed loss now moves in silence. Those are not random mood swings. They are evidence of coherence establishing a new baseline. Bruce Lipton's research on epigenetics hinted at this years ago. He showed that the environment surrounding a cell determines its expression more than its genetic code. But the environment is not just physical, it's energetic, emotional, perceptual. Every thought you think, every feeling you sustain, is an instruction to trillions of cells saying, "This is who we are now." When the instruction changes, biology follows. The jump doesn't happen to you, it happens as you. And yet, the human part of you resists because it has memorized struggle. The nervous system equates familiarity with safety, even when familiarity hurts. That's why breakthroughs often begin as breakdowns. The psyche clings to the known until it vibrates itself into exhaustion. Only then can the new pattern stabilize. This is the paradox of awakening. The moment you stop chasing transformation, you become transformable. When you stop performing the version of yourself you once needed to survive, the field rushes in to fill the vacancy. Relationships shift, opportunities appear, habits dissolve, not because you force them, but because reality can no longer recognize the outdated frequency you used to emit. That's why your discomfort is sacred. The friction you feel between who you've been and who you're becoming is the heat of atoms rearranging. It's the pulse of inevitability, the universe remapping its circuitry around your new coherence. So when you sense the quiet pull of change, don't rush to name it or fix it. Sit inside it. Let the unfamiliar sensation of peace feel unsafe for a while. Let your biology learn that safety can feel this expansive. Because this is what the human side of a quantum jump really is. Not fireworks, not revelation, but the steady hum of a self that has stopped arguing with reality. And when that happens, inevitability is no longer theoretical. It's breathing through you. The emotional frequency, the language of the field. Emotion is the original technology. Long before the mind learned to name things, the heart was already coding the universe through feeling. Every emotion you experience is a frequency broadcast, a vibration carved in light and chemistry, translating the invisible into matter. Modern science calls it resonance. Mystics called it prayer. But both describe the same phenomenon. The field doesn't hear your words, it feels your tone. When your emotional signature changes, the entire architecture of your experience rewrites itself to match. The HeartMath Institute has measured what the ancients only whispered, that the electromagnetic field of the heart is 60 times stronger than that of the brain. and it changes instantly with every shift in emotion. Gratitude expands it, fear contracts it, love stabilizes it into coherence. This field isn't metaphorical, it is measurable, and it is through this living pulse that the body communicates with the quantum fabric around it. You are constantly translating inner vibration into outer reality. Every reaction, every silent judgment, every rush of awe or grief sends data into the field. That data collapses probabilities. You may think you're waiting for the world to give you a reason to feel joy, but it's the other way around. The moment you feel it sincerely, the universe updates to accommodate it. Emotion is not a byproduct of circumstance. It is the instrument that tunes circumstance itself. This is why the same event can liberate one person and shatter another, not because reality plays favorites, but because each is vibrating in a different octave of interpretation. To one, the loss is devastation. To another, initiation. To one, rejection proves unworthiness. To another, it reveals destiny. The outer form is identical, but the internal frequency selects the timeline. You've been taught to fear emotion as instability, to suppress it, intellectualize it, or spiritualize it into polite phrases. Yet emotion is the purest form of communication you have with the quantum. It tells the truth of your state before thought interferes. The key is not to force positive emotion, but to allow authentic coherence. When sadness is felt completely, without resistance, it resolves into clarity. When anger is owned without projection, it transforms into power. Every emotion, when honored, returns to its natural vibration, love. Love not as sentiment, but as structural harmony. In this harmony, you become fluent in the universe's only language, frequency. Every time you breathe consciously, feel fully, and align thought with sensation, you are speaking that language clearly, and the field, ever precise, responds in kind. So the real alchemy is not thinking your way into a better future, but feeling your way into a coherent present. Because coherence is not a mood, it's a signature. It tells the cosmos who you are in this exact moment, and the cosmos replies, "Then so it shall be." When emotion and awareness unite, inevitability begins to hum beneath everything you do. The deep dive, the 7 layers of becoming. If we could slow a quantum jump down to the speed of awareness, we'd see that it unfolds not as a single leap, but as a layered metamorphosis, 7 invisible movements through which the self reconfigures. These are not steps to follow, but frequencies to remember. Each one reflects an ancient archetype encoded in consciousness itself. Together, they form the architecture of inevitability. The first layer is disruption. Something cracks in the surface of your story, an event, a loss, a sudden fatigue with the old rhythm. It feels like chaos, but it's not punishment. It's a signal. The vibration of the old self can no longer sustain coherence. Every initiation begins as disturbance, because energy must unbind before it can reform. Then comes disillusionment. The narratives that once protected you start to dissolve. You begin to see how much of your identity was built on survival. The masks slip. You realize that your certainty was never truth, only comfort. This is the stage most resist. Yet it is the first proof that the jump is already in progress. Third is surrender. The ego runs out of cleverness. It stops bargaining with life and whispers, "I don't know." This not knowing is sacred. In physics, uncertainty collapses the wave. In spirit, it opens the heart. When you release the illusion of control, you become permeable to the field's intelligence. From surrender arises alignment. Not the forced positivity of spiritual performance, but the quiet recognition that life is not happening to you, but through you. The body relaxes, the breath deepens, and suddenly small synchronicities start to ripple around you, not as magic, but as confirmation that your inner circuitry is recalibrating to coherence. Then comes expansion. Awareness extends beyond the skin. You begin to sense life responding in real time, conversations, symbols, opportunities folding into orchestration. It's the phase mystics called grace, when effort and flow merge into one continuous movement. But every expansion births its shadow, integration. The light you touched must anchor in matter. Old patterns resurface for reconciliation. You feel tested, but it's only your nervous system learning to hold a larger voltage. Integration teaches you that transcendence without embodiment is incomplete. The new frequency must find expression in the small invoice tone, in honesty, in rest. Finally, there is emergence, not rebirth, but remembrance. The field rearranges fully, and life mirrors your internal geometry with precision. You no longer chase alignment, you radiate it. Reality becomes conversational, responsive, alive, lucid. You recognize yourself not as the character in the jump, but as the jump itself, awareness continually folding into form and unfolding again. Through these 7 layers, the myth of effort dissolves. What remains is participation. You are no longer forcing the universe to change. You are listening as it breathes you into its next iteration. That is the anatomy of becoming, and the rhythm by which quantum jumps cease to be miraculous and become inevitable. The collapse of separation, the end of 2 worlds. At the heart of every quantum revelation lies a single dissolving truth. There is no gap between you and the universe. The sense of me in here and world out there is the grand illusion that keeps the field fragmented. Once that illusion collapses, the jump is no longer something that happens to you. It happens as you. Separation was always a perceptual artifact, the mind's attempt to measure what can only be lived. We call it distance, but it is really delay, the lag between energy and recognition. In physics, this is mirrored by the observer effect. In mysticism, it's the veil of Maya. Both reveal the same truth. Observation and creation are the same act, viewed from different sides of the mirror. When your awareness ceases to draw a line between observer and observed, the world stops being an object of control and becomes a movement of participation. The tree outside your window, the stranger who meets your eyes, the thought passing through your chest, each is a ripple of the same continuum, expressing itself in different densities. The field isn't responding to you. The field is you. In this understanding, even the idea of quantum jump begins to change meaning. It's not a leap between realities, it's the dissolution of the notion that there were ever separate realities to begin with. The self who struggles to ascend, the self who believes they must earn transformation both vanish when you see that consciousness has never left the present moment. The future timeline you dream of already exists here, enfolded inside the now like light within a prism. Einstein hinted at this when he described space-time as relative, inseparable, and fluid. No absolute past, no fixed future, only relational perception. The mystics described it through stillness. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing changes, yet everything is illuminated. To collapse separation is to end the inner civil war, the constant negotiation between matter and spirit, thought and feeling, heaven and earth. You begin to sense that the same intelligence orchestrating galaxies is pulsing quietly through your nervous system. Your breath is not something you take, it is something the cosmos exhales through you. And once this is known, fear begins to lose its utility. How could the wave fear the ocean? How could the dreamer dread the dream? The need to control reality fades because you see that control was never power, coherence was. In this unified awareness, inevitability is no longer an ambition but a law. When there is no other to resist, all possible realities converge into harmony. You are not a fragment attempting to heal. You are the totality remembering itself. The moment this truth settles into your body, not as concept, but as sensation, the field quiets, the jump completes, and the self that once reached for the divine discovers it was never reaching at all. It was being reached. Integration, living the paradox of awakening. Once the illusion of separation dissolves, a subtler challenge emerges: how to live now. After the revelation, you must return to the rhythm of the ordinary world. The dishes still need washing, emails still wait for replies, and yet nothing feels quite the same. This is the paradox of awakening. Reality remains unchanged, but your relationship to it becomes unrecognizable. Integration is where the mystical becomes practical, where light learns to wear skin. It is not about holding on to transcendence, but allowing it to inform the mundane. You begin to see that spirituality without embodiment is just another escape, and embodiment without awareness is just repetition. The task is to merge both, until each moment of your daily life becomes an echo of cosmic symmetry. The field doesn't ask you to abandon the world, it asks you to inhabit it differently. You can drink coffee and still be infinite. You can laugh, cry, stumble, love, fail, all while remaining aware that the universe is breathing through every heartbeat. Enlightenment was never meant to detach you from emotion. It was meant to make you transparent enough for emotion to pass through without distortion. Alan Watts once said, "The art of living is neither careless drifting nor fearful clinging, but being sensitive to each moment." Integration is precisely that. Sensitivity and attunement so deep that even imperfection becomes part of the dance. You stop chasing vibration as a performance and start living coherence as a practice. This is where the work becomes subtler, because even after glimpsing unity, the personality will try to reclaim ownership. I am enlightened now. I have transcended. But the moment you claim awakening as identity, the ego sneaks back wearing spiritual robes. Integration means humility, remembering that awareness doesn't belong to you, you belong to it. So how do you live this paradox? By practicing intimacy with the now, by treating the smallest gestures as sacred physics. The way you listen becomes quantum. The way you touch, speak, and rest becomes an experiment in coherence. You learn that reality doesn't require constant supervision, it just requires consistent resonance. Integration is not a phase you finish, it's a relationship you sustain. Each day invites you to embody what you've remembered, to let the insights of the void express through human hands. And laughter. It's here that inevitability matures from concept to character. You stop trying to maintain the shift, you become the stability that sustains it. And when challenges arise, because they will, you no longer see them as regressions. You recognize them as recalibrations, opportunities for your nervous system to practice coherence under pressure. You meet life like a scientist of spirit, testing whether your frequency holds when the field shakes. That's the secret of integration, not escaping duality, but dancing with it consciously. Because the ultimate proof of awakening is not how still you can sit in meditation, it's how deeply you can love while standing in the storm. The memory of light. At the end of every journey, there comes a moment that feels less like an ending and more like a homecoming, a quiet recognition that what you sought was never lost. You were not learning to create reality. You were remembering that you are reality, dreaming itself, awake through billions of different eyes. You began this exploration, asking how quantum jumps become inevitable. And now, the answer hums through your breath. inevitability is not an outcome, it's your origin. It's the natural expression of a universe that cannot help but evolve. Consciousness doesn't move toward perfection. It unfolds it, the way light unfolds into color when it meets a prism. You are that prism bending infinity into experience, translating the formless into form. Every revelation, every heartbreak, every small act of grace has been part of that translation. The field wasn't testing you, it was teaching you your own reflection. Each time you surrendered, the universe learned to trust you with more awareness. Each time you loved without agenda, you widened the channel between matter and spirit. And each time you faced silence without running, you remembered that silence was the original sound of creation. This is the real quantum jump, not leaping across time, but collapsing the illusion that there was ever distance between what you dream and what you are. When you become coherent, the field doesn't respond, it recognizes itself. The stars and the atoms, the breath and the thought, the self and the cosmos, all become one sentence spoken in different tones of light. The mystics describe this as returning to the source, but it's not a destination, it's the constant pulse of awareness rediscovering itself in motion. You are both the traveler and the terrain, both the spark and the flame. And in that realization, inevitability reveals its simplest truth. Evolution is not something you achieve, it's something you allow. So now, as you step back into your ordinary life, the same hands, the same world, but a new coherence, carry this remembrance quietly. Nothing you touch is truly external. Every glance, every word, every silence is a dialogue between frequencies of the same consciousness. The universe has never been outside you. It has only been waiting for you to see through its eyes. Let this knowing soften you. Let it make you patient, curious, unafraid. Because once you've glimpsed how fluid reality truly is, fear becomes a misunderstanding, an echo of an outdated self. In this moment, the jump completes itself effortlessly, silently, inevitably. You have not reached the end of something, you've simply remembered what you've always been, light, folding back into itself to remember its name. This is Quantum Quest, where consciousness becomes the experiment.